Okay, welcome back to our second video. This is in week 2, starting with him. So I'm touching his side here with the stick again. He's showing that he is going to be just a little bit defiant and argue that he doesn't want anything touching him by biting the stick, swishing his tail, showing his discontent. So what I'm trying to do here is pressure to the side to get him to yield his hindquarters. He knows how to do it. There he's arguing again, but he steps over. As soon as he does, I relieve the pressure and reward him. Again, the withers being the bad place before is now a point of reward. Okay, as in all of my approaches to training, I give or ask the same question with the same aid or tool, in this case being the carrot stick, and rewarding in the same manner on the same side until he really gets it. Here I'm just rubbing the stick all over his side to let him know that it's okay, it's not hurting him, reassuring him with that. And then touching him again with the stick. He doesn't approve of it or really like it, but despite him showing his displeasure, he is still moving over. Very good. So I reward him here and then ask again. More displeasure, so I will just go and stick with it, apply the stick, and good, he moves over, so I will reward him with a scratch on the withers again for praise. Good boy. Every time he kicks out, I just stick with it. I do not relieve the pressure when he kicks out. Otherwise, he'll continue to do that, and that becomes a bad habit. So then what would I do on one side, I have to do on the other. So I will switch the lunge line so that I have more control on the inside D-ring of the halter. And then Doc likes to come in here, the dog here, so it's a little bit of a distraction, but it's also kind of good for him. So letting him know that he has to pay attention even through distractions. Here, he's a little more sensitive on that side, and so he responds quite well, actually. He's very happy with his reaction there. He's a good boy. Although he is still trying to bite and kicking out, he responds very quickly on this side. And then again, the dog's there, I shoo him away. And all of this is actually good desensitization training, as well as getting him to focus despite his environment, to pay attention to me. Go on, go, go. He actually handled that pretty well, me getting after the dog, so I was proud of him there. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah, good boy. Good boy. Figuring it out. You can look at it. Just not like it. You can't kick. Again, going back to the other side and asking him to see how well he remembers. He remembers how to kick, but he did very well. He still did it. He was a good boy. So at first I'm going to use, as I'm showing here, the carrot stick to apply pressure, but later I can walk up to him and stand next to him and apply the pressure, as opposed to the end of the carrot stick or training stick. It's just right now he's green and I want him to experience this with the stick as opposed to me standing there and risk getting kicked. He is doing it, although he is aggravated and showing his displeasure. He is doing it, so he does get rewarded when he does it. Here he was being very ornery and not really paying much attention to me. I really had to use a little bit more pressure here, and then he moved over and he was a good boy. So again, he got rewarded. He figures it out pretty quickly, but he kind of has this "you're gonna have to make me" type attitude. So here, now that I've worked with his mind a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and ask him to just walk in a circle around me. And I want to see the bend slightly with his nose and through his body, but through the forward motion. So here he gets a little stuck, and I'm just encouraging him to go out.
Go on. Go.
And moving the dog off. But encouraging him to go out away from me by slapping the air around him and not really ever hitting him. And then here you'll see him step through with that inside hind leg, disengaging that hind end and bending at the body through the nose. There's really nice. And that's kind of hard for him because he's young and he still doesn't know how to carry himself properly, but he's learning pretty quickly. And all of this work we put in on the ground translates once we are in the saddle. If I can't have control of his feet from the ground through the halter and the lunge line, then I'm not going to have any bit of difference of control while mounted, and that can be a disaster and very scary. And then once he's learned a bad habit, it'll be very hard, very difficult to break him of it. So this side is a little more difficult for him to continue with the forward motion and create a bend in his body. He gets a little confused, but he figures it out pretty quickly. He just is kind of full of himself this day and wants to just move forward and move out and not really pay attention to much of the training that we're doing. So I went ahead and decided that he can do a little bit of lunging.
He's still got a belly. I know. He's got that big baby belly. He does. That's what you're like, why is he so swollen? I'm like, no, that's just his baby belly.
Sent him out away from me, giving him his head. So he's done really well at learning his verbal cues. And in this past week, he's done very well at relaxing through the trot. And that is the foundation of any discipline, is relaxation and rhythm. If he's all nervous and his head's in the air and he's not relaxed with his head nice and level, then I'm really not going to be able to teach him anything, because he'll be on high alert and not paying attention and absorbing any of the education we're putting in. But here he's done really well, and he's learning to put his ear on me and has learned verbal cues to come down and transition, and learning to move forward with verbal cues as well.
You know what I've noticed since he started
So you see the slack in the line, and he's got his head towards me, and he really relaxes and drops his head with a nice rhythm.
That's the way he's put together.
Then he is in the receiving mode, so he is learning at this point. And he's doing a very good job. Again, practicing transitions. Here he did not want to continue moving because he felt he needed to stop to poop. So I allowed it this time.
Trying to make him just relax and everything. Good boy, drop his head. Good boy.
He's getting stronger with just our lunging workouts, and starting to build a top line now and a little bit of muscling in his croup, because he was really just atrophied there. And then being on stall rest for the time that he has been didn't help. So we're rebuilding some muscle and helping him create a good carriage underneath himself.
He's totally, oh my God, he's so unbalanced. Canter? 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 No, don't rush into it. No.
Here I asked him to canter, but he was rushing into it through the trot, kind of cheating. So I brought him back down, and then we'll ask again for a more collected transition into the canter to help him learn that's how we are supposed to go into our gait. I have a training stick but not a lunge line here. And again, he's young and he's not really developed, so his balance is not all together yet, but he's getting it. He's figuring it out. He's got a very long, smooth stride, and there you can see he's pulling a bit. So I will be changing his training halter to a cavesson or lunging halter, so it has a ring on the front, so I have better control over his nose and he won't be able to tip his head to the outside. He was paying attention to the other horse in the arena at the time. I was very proud of him here. He was lunging while there was another horse and got a little bit spooked there, but continued with his forward movement, which is really important. You can control forward movement, but once they stop and they start bucking and acting silly and rearing is when you get into trouble. So I'm glad I kept his mind there. Here he was watching them bring out the tarps and cavalettis for a training session on the other end of the barn. So he just stopped, had to see what was going on, and then decided it was okay to move forward. Didn't make a big deal out of it. And you'll see his ear's still on me, so he is still being respectful and listening while paying attention to everything else that's going on. But I want to keep a hold of his mind, and by doing that I got to keep a hold of his forward motion. So by sending him forward, I can control his head a little bit, and so I just keep him moving, and he's very respectful and responsive to that. Again, nice and relaxed with his head down. He's learning. He still has moments there where he throws his head up, and that's just being a baby, but he's learning. So I just continue more of this until he's nice and relaxed and keeps his head down there. Good boy. And then I end it on a good note with him and just walk him and let him cool down. He did a good job that day. I'm proud of him. He's making a lot of progress. He's smart, even though he's opinionated. I am happy with him. So moving forward, we're continuing with this work and then building onto this with little things each day to add up to the big things. So stay tuned for the next video. Okay, so here I'm just going to show you how far he's come along with learning to stop and be respectful of my space without me forcing it. So there you can see the line's very loose. I stop and he stops. He's really trying hard to be respectful and stay out of my bubble. He doesn't like the pressure, and he's picked that up pretty quickly. Here I ask him to back. The first couple steps he does very slow and reluctantly, so I added a little bit of pressure, and he did well. And then we continue on. I walk on and he walks on. Here I'm just grabbing his attention and asking him to go backward. Wasn't straight, but he did it, so I'm happy. There he stepped into my space, so I correct him and put him back where he was. And then we walk forward. He's really trying to pay attention to the other things going on in the arena on this day. We had a couple of horses training, so this was good experience for him. Again, not touching his face, just jiggling the line, a little bit of energy in the line, and he backs up. He was a very good boy. Here, yielding his forequarters, not touching him. Good boy. He moves off of me and out of my space. Then I'll do the same thing on the other side. What we train on one side, we train on the other. And he's really learned to respond to this. No touching him at all, which was very good. I'm happy with that. He was a good boy. Again, you see the slack in the line. As I asked him to back up, he did a very good job. And he stopped when I asked. He's really picked these cues up pretty quickly, so I'm happy with that. That's going to be the key to having control of him and having respect of him. And the difference that makes is in the future, if he is to spook at something, he understands that that is my space and my bubble, and he is to stay out of it and move off of me. So if he were to spook at something, he will jump to either side of me and not on top of me and potentially cause injury, knock me down, or step on my foot, anything of that nature. Here I send him out. Want him to lunge a little bit. Just in a small circle at first. Again, creating that bend with his nose. He does really well. Crossing over with that inside leg. Giving me his nose. He's really starting to understand what I'm asking for. I'm very happy with that. Here you can really appreciate he's trying here, tipping his nose to the inside and crossing over with that inside leg behind. So he's really starting to get it, creating that bend in his body, and that's good. So here I'm just going to ask him to yield his hindquarters. Good. He moved forward a little bit, but that's okay. He got the concept of it. And that was very good. And then I'll do the other side. Asking him to stand still with his forequarters and just move his hindquarters. Good. Good boy. That was much better. And then here I'm going to check in with him again. Repeating what we've been taught. No pressure on his nose. Good. Slacken the line. I'm going to ask him to move out. Here we've trotted a little bit and warmed up, and then now you can see his transition into canter from walk is quite nice actually. He is being a little bit lazy here today, but he did canter right off pretty nicely. So I was happy with the takeoff. I'm not happy with him being lazy. That's just the component of him still having a threshold of hormones. A lot of time colts can be super lazy as well. Here his head's a little bit higher, and he's more concerned about the other horse that's training in the arena on the other side. So really just trying to get him to relax and bring that head down. Grabbing his attention. Here we're just working in the other direction with the same thing. Getting him to relax and find a nice relaxed rhythm. Bring his head down. Here his canter is much more relaxed and collected. He's a good boy. He's a little bit more underneath himself, although still lazy. A bit more underneath himself and carried himself a little bit better. Again, he's really picked up the verbal cues quite quickly, so he did a really good job there. I don't really necessarily need him to be cantering a whole lot. I just really want him to understand what I'm asking for in the transitions and the verbal cue to canter. I got after him there because he came down to a trot on his own, so I wanted him to continue to canter until I asked him to stop. I did go ahead and take some of the footage of this direction out just to save time, but he did very well. Just a little bit lazy this day. So again, with the foundation, to get him used to someday being on top of him and taking my coat off, I'm going to start that now on the ground and desensitize him to it. Show it to him, let him see it, let him be touched by it, throw it around in the air around him, and then do it on both sides until he is just non-reactive to it. And he does pretty well, actually. I was pretty surprised about this. He did well. Again, he's paying attention to who's in the arena with him, but I went ahead and took the coat off.
You have the whole arena if you want.
Let him see it, dropped it on the ground, and then let him approach it on his own, kind of investigate it. He wasn't bothered by it too much, which I was really happy with that, actually. Not much bothers him, on the ground anyway. He does have his opinion of things, but in regards to really being spooked at stuff like that, he tends to do well.
Can I? No, just your backpack. Dean, I have a question for you. Yep. When I'm walking Minor and I want him to stop, he stops, but then he turns his butt away.
He's yielding. Yeah, that's good. So he's yielding his hindquarters towards you. I mean, from you, so that's good.
Right. I don't know why you do this.
You don't worry about her what she's doing. You're not going to be able to help her anymore. Sorry, dear. Here we're just going to work on some desensitization with the carrot stick or training stick with other horses in the arena. So with many distractions, and he's doing really well. Proud of him. He stands very quietly, does very well. If you pay attention to his headset here, he's a little high head and alert, paying attention to everything that's going on around him. A lot of commotion. Even though there's horses training, he really did do a good job with the desensitization. super happy with the way he behaved during this session. So here I just started teaching him how to lower his head and relax. He resists it, and then he understands. Horses cannot physiologically be nervous or scared when their head is down in that type of grazing or relaxed position. It is when their head is heightened and their adrenaline is pumping and they're alert that they become more apt to speak. They are on high alert. So I really encourage him to drop his head and just be okay with us standing there. Not moving his feet, not moving forward, just standing and relaxing, just being there. And trusting me in this moment. He really caught on to this quickly. I was very, very happy with him. He did really well with this. This is also very important to be able to have this tool for bridling and haltering, because he's only going to get bigger and more muscular. So to be able to encourage and teach him how to lower his head is super important. I've seen people standing on their tippy toes trying to bridle their horse, and it's kind of silly. If he has a key or an aid or cue to lower his head, that's super helpful. And he does it. There he moved forward and I didn't ask, so I put him back. And he just needs to understand that I have my bubble and he has his, and he stays out of mine. And as long as I can control those feet, again, I can control his mind. This was such a good situation for him. The horse is around him. He's totally relaxed. Really enjoying his bonding moment, and now he's figured out what I'm asking for when I ask him to drop his head a little bit.
Under the lunge line, she will buck. I always lunge her before I ride. But she gets all of her giggles out, and then she's good. She's all about business. That was a pretty good. I didn't want with the horse. I had to lunge all the time before I go somewhere. That was one of my stipulations. Like, I don't want to have to do that. Yeah. She'll outgrow it. She's still kind of silly. How old is Margarita? I think she's 8 or 9 this year. There you go. She's young.
So we just finished out our daily session hanging out together, and he did very well.